And I just
Sure.
keep aiming for that. And I think over time I've gotten better because I don't like talking into a lens. It seems really freaky to me.
Yeah, it is definitely a little strange, right? I mean, you've mentioned a certain amount of frustration in some of your last videos, right? Of how you and I share the opinion myself that the MGTOW supposed men's rights stuff has really degraded towards less practical and more attitude manipulation kind of pornography, really.
Yeah, it's kind of how you can game the current predicament,
Sure.
rather than understand it as an adult, as a responsible, say, parental figure, the way you would give advice to your son with that head. But it's all very schoolyard, a lot of posturing, and a lot of the stuff works. But like you said, it's manipulation tactics. It's,
Well,
well, when you press this, let's learn about male and female nature, like scientists looking at rats. So when we press this, they react this way. But it's not a genuine, as you've mentioned the word relating. It's not that you're in the equation playing that mutual game of tennis. It's you exacting something on another to get what you want only, and you don't care about throwing them away once you've gotten what you want, or you care very little about them in the equation. So then, for me, it's hypocritical that then some of these guys will complain about how they're treated, and it's like, well, if you're using the tactics that you yourself abhor, there's a limit. When there's survival at stake, I understand you needing to fight your way out. But if you've got a position of power, so to speak, in terms of manipulating somebody, you can't really use that as a defense.
well, absolutely. I'm glad that resonates with you, because that that should be said more often. I think that, but I mean, like part of it is too that obviously a lot of this commentary is comes from a certain sort of male who's, it's one thing about scientists talking about how they analyze the rats that run on their maze, I guess, but it's quite conspicuous that a lot of some of these voices that are quite prevalent aren't scientists and haven't messed with rats much, and that, like that's problematic, right? So again, it gets into the area of bullshit and lack of authenticity. And I think whatever it is that one is attempting to do at this moment in history, the real void for any one of us to focus on. I mean, sidestepping the male-female thing. I mean, I've definitely kind of wanted to move away from it because I have found the conversation increasingly unconstructive and toxic. And because for precisely these reasons that you're suggesting, it's like, well, I mean, it doesn't make a lot of sense to be criticizing people of, in essence, the same kind of petty, selfish, lowest common denominator motives when you're exhibiting the exact same behavior, but maybe with a different set of preferences, right?
Yeah, it's also that's the thing I had to kind of contend with myself. I wanted to be better than just throwing mud at women,
Sure.
and I understood that what I wanted from even friends was very, very, if not sort of a parallel to what I wanted from an intimate partner.
Oh,
So
for sure.
operating in a different way, with a woman, you have to put on this suit and close this part of your mind and close off this part of your heart and all this. Whereas with a friend and every other person in life that you care about, that you trust, that you would do something for, that you're grateful for, that you have in your life, you're completely different. So you're almost like you adopt the narrative I hear of guys these days, they almost adopt a protective business-like posture in casual clothes as a defense mechanism. And I
Definitely.
think it's kind of, even if you want to be completely selfish about it, you are getting so much less from that closed way of being, if you want if you so choose. And again, guys can choose not to. But
Sure.
if you honestly do want to get what typically you'd get out of a good relationship, you are closing so much off for your own sake. Don't care about her. I mean, you should, but if you completely want to be, what do I fairly want to share in this relationship? What do I want to feel? What do I want to get out of it? What do I want to experience? If you close off doors that don't allow any of that experience to come through, I mean, what's the point really? At that point, you may as well not relate to women other than in sort of a rudimentary pedestrian way, at the supermarket. Hi, how are you? Thanks for the change, and off you go.
Absolutely. I mean, that's well stated. I mean, I would add to that, how reasonable is the expectation that you would be able to do that, relate in that manner, if you had the opportunity, if you'd never practiced it?
Yeah.
I mean, I see it as a skill set, right? So, I mean, it's not a simple thing to relate to other human beings in a constructive manner. That's something you have to learn. You're not taught that, right? So without reaching for it, you will never achieve it, right?
Yeah. And that's that bridge that I noticed, like, it's slowly crept in a great way in your videos recently, that more pedestrian relatability, to be able to bridge that that conceptual stuff to make it everyday and ethical and make it practical.
But part of the reason that things have gravitated for me towards the more practical is simply because I know so many people now that are practically dealing with these issues, right? So, like, it's right in front of my face. If I'm in an environment where I'm out farting around in my sailboat in some la land environment, living on Lingcod and being all like precious, then it's I mean, the sky's the limit. You can get pretty esoteric. The thing is, like, the esoteric stuff is wonderful value too, as long as it's personally accessible and real. Okay, but yeah, it's a path to walk. You gotta get started on that. You can't just jump in midstream with that shit. And but right now, it's like I just see an absolute wave of anxiety and mental health issues in so many people that I know, and it concerns me, frankly. Like I think you and I have talked about it, but my dad was a small town undertaker, right?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I've mentioned that, right? So like it's a thing that's quite concerning to me to see people faced with existential dread and the pressure of mortality, because a lot of people are not equipped to do that. And the fact is, as far as I'm concerned, I've always been absolutely forthright about this personally in my own life, is that you will come to terms with that shit at some point in your life, right? I mean, it will happen. But trouble is, for most people, it happens in the last 6 months of their life once they're, diagnosed with something terminal, and it isn't funny because you're super ill prepared, right?
Have you, in your past, just generally been more of a loner?
Me? Not by temperament. I'm actually relatively social. By temperament, but I'm unusual. I grew up in an environment where aspiring intellectual abilities were not valued, right? And it was a rural environment, and there wasn't a large social group, and of course that's very pre-internet and whatever. And if you start to walk down that path, it's no different than anything else you do. Like, if you were to get into bowling, right, and you were just a rabid bowler, you find that the social group of the people that you want to go bowling with gets a lot smaller, right? okay, or anything else that you aspire to do well, including thinking, you're going to find that your social group shrinks up a lot. I mean, certainly I'd love to be in an environment where I was surrounded with people that enjoyed it as much as I do. But that hasn't been how my encounters with society has normally been. So yes, you end up being a loner.
The reason I ask that is like I've reflected on my past as well, and I don't know if it's in a similar way. I don't want to speak for you, but I've found it, in terms of temperament, I've found it very easy to socialize.
Sure.
I'm not an introvert, but like in social situations, I'm very confident. I'm very agreeable. I tend to know my boundaries. I mean, I'm not perfect. And I tend to be more, a sense of where I am. Mm-hmm. But I prefer, I feel very comfortable in isolation.
Sure.
So if I had to choose between the two, if I absolutely did, I would choose, without even thinking, isolation over people. And I'm not saying that's healthy, but why I ask that in terms of, say, the mental tumblers of you and I being able to maybe make sense of things, say, in these times, better than the average pedestrian. I'm thinking in that isolation, and then you naturally go towards reading and finding answers and introspection and blah, blah, blah. In that, you come to terms with, I always thought isolation and death is very close, the emptiness. Mm-hmm. And so given that and our comfort with isolation, the anxiety of now what the world's going through is so much more for the average person than you and I, maybe because we've got a comfort with isolation and, going into books and having conversations with dead authors in our heads and things like that.
Well, I mean, that definitely helps, of course, because, I mean, it's good to develop the skill to be comfortable in the company of your own mind, right? And a lot of people are not comfortable with that. It can be, for a lot of people, actually anxiety-inducing, right? Because I've certainly met a lot of people that really, if there isn't a continuous stimulation of noise, basically, then what arises for them is doubts, right? Anybody, everybody's had the quiet time in the middle of the night where they wonder about stuff, right? But a lot of people's mechanism by which they cope with the kinds of questions that life forces you to answer is just by staying busy and distracted, right?
Yeah, because I kind of think the benefit that the pre-internet generation had over the current is reading and writing.
Sure.
In a real parental sense, because reading and writing is you speaking to yourself, and I'm always encouraging guys, especially today, the younger guys are feeling more and more anxious,
right?
And they're not exercised in it. It's not attractive at all. And what I found that it's probably done with previous generations like ours is when you're alone with your head, which is what you're doing when you're reading and writing, you are upstairs in your head talking to yourself.
That's right.
And the language, you can call it the superego. Your superego is trained to sound more like Hemingway, a sympathetic person, rather than today, if you're not reading that kind of mentorship from Hemingway, and if that's not the sympathetic mentor in your head, if all you get is internet trolling, hookup culture, women hate you, society hates you, when you're left alone, that's the superego in your head that's putting you down, kicking you, etc., etc. So I can understand how guys feel, and then trying to tell them, just read, man. Where it's like it'll be for your own good, and it's hard to explain why. So that's really, really challenging, I think, for today's guys.
Well, it is, and I mean, what it comes down to is that there's just no substitute for authentic experience. Like that's the deal. Like the depth of your capacity to understand will be the depth of the level of investment that you put into it. Like it is interesting to me, like one of, because I follow the psychological stuff mostly and research, especially for people with PTSD, because I talk to a lot of guys that deal with that, how effective writing and particularly handwriting is if you're writing down phobias and fears, or in terms of a modality to overcome things. Because simply doing the act of committing to actually picking up a fucking pencil and putting it on paper requires more depth and usage of your brain.
Yeah.
Than just thinking about it, right? You actually have to do that. You have to symbolize it. You have to code it down. And if you are trying to talk yourself out of a phobia, just going through the effort of actually writing it down with a pen and paper is radically more effective than just sitting there and ruminating on it.
Yeah, and it's almost like you're taking a small act.
Well, that's precisely it. Yeah. Yeah. So like, and that kind of thing applies to everything in life. Like the more commitment that you put to it, the deeper it will be and the more the results. And like, it's kind of startling to me that people don't make more of that when it comes to like cognition. Like anybody that's a fitness trainer is going to tell you that muscle recruitment is everything. Right? Like the more of your body that's involved in any given like exercise, the greater the benefit. The same thing applies to your brain. The more investment that you have in understanding or resolving a thing, the more benefit that you're going to come out of it or get out of it, right? So I think people expect an awful lot with very minimal investment. And in fact, a lot of that, and I think a lot of guys in particular fall very victim to this, that they think that cognition itself will give them benefits. I mean, I remember years ago when I was in college, I had this friend, Bill was his name, and he was kind of this Asperger's type, the kind of guys that I often hang around with. and anyway, Bill, like, I mean, he was not the suavest or debonerist kind of guy. Suave and deboner he was. But anyway, he came over and he was just all flustered out because he had a date with somebody, right? And he's like, Jay, well, you play guitar? And it's like, sure, I play guitar. And he said, can you teach me to play guitar? I got a date tomorrow. and I'm like, buddy. He's like, well, just show me some chords, man. And I'm like, awesome. Because he had this idea in his head that if somebody just showed him how to do it, like, that's all it took, right? That kind of thing that you can just think that if you just understand a thing, then you somehow magically can be able to do it. And so I said, like, well, here's how you do it. And he was like, oh, this is hard. He was kind of bewildered by the fact that, he just, and I think a lot of people approach life this way. It's like, you gotta learn to do the damn thing, right? You just can't just think
It's not dissimilar to the way guys think that pickup lines will work on women.
Well, that's right. I mean, it's not a silly, like, I mean, it's a video game player's mentality that you just like, boom, on the screen, you get the magic ability once the bell goes off, and then you can whoop ass or something. And it's like, that's not how life works. It's like, ta-da, trophy, boom-de-doom. It's like guitar player.
Yeah, and in terms of sort of the literature, just circling back to that, I kind of found it interesting that, say, I've talked recently to Spetsnaz as well. He's sort of in a similar field to you. He helps youth, especially in the sort of disadvantaged prison system and things like that, fairly rough guys. And I found it interesting that both in different ways, you, he, and I really have an interest in literature and how it's reflected on our perceived, say, maybe personality to others online. I mean, we know how it's informed us. And I'm just thinking about how much is missing from men's lives today that just don't have access to it, nor the interest, given the bread and circuses that the culture gives guys to sort of make literature and all the old ways wholly uninteresting.
Well, sure. I mean, a person has to have at least enough curiosity and attention span to take this stuff on, I guess, so
like, for instance, I'm thinking if someone from a previous generation that clearly had it all together and had elements in their personality and their life that I dearly wish I had, and they're telling me, the way to do that is to, start riding horses and, I don't know, adopt an interest that's so antiquated that I'm really struggling naturally to pretend that is working, and I can't get far enough down the road for it to start kind of getting its hooks into me. And I feel like what might have benefited us has drifted away so much that it's almost over the horizon, and guys are like, oh yeah, literature, books, yeah, cute. Anyway, and then they want, the quick pill, the red pill, the
sure
whatever. So
well, like there's a certain amount of sophomoric hubris that you see, especially in things that are philosophical in nature. Something that I've always kind of complained about. I have a friend that's a relatively advanced and somewhat famous mathematician, and I've complained to him about this. It's like, one of the advantages of being a mathematician, especially, he's quite pedigreed, is that you don't just have people come up at a party and tell you, I figured it out different than you. They don't just show up and lecture him on, like calculus because they have a different opinion about it, right? And when it comes to philosophical concerns too, or philosophical concerns instead, or to some degree psychological terms, it seems like everybody that's got an asshole thinks that they're like some kind of expert in this stuff without putting it in any kind of time at all, right? And, you're not going to find very many people out there that don't feel that they have a opinion on a lot of the major issues in life, even though that they may be utterly unconversant in any way, form, or fashion of the millennia of really brilliant people who put a lot of time and effort into thinking about these things, right? And it's kind of astonishing that no one really has the interest to even like wonder if somebody else thought about the same thing. Like why wouldn't you just at least investigate that, right? I mean, there's really I wouldn't say no. I mean, there's a couple of concerns that are probably facing people alive today that they didn't maybe several millennia back. But only just a handful. I mean, otherwise, like, human life has not changed a great deal, and a lot of the human concerns are very similar to they might have been even in the day and age of Pythagoras. So, like, there's a lot there that's quite pertinent. I mean, there are definitely concerns that are pressing today that were unprecedented, right? But like, the bulk of it's not.
it used to be, I mean, the world in some sense has always been for the young to take the mantle and sort of run with it. But now we've made youth, we've protracted it through our entire lives. So it used to be the potential of youth would lead the future, but then the youth would become an adult, and that adult mind would sort of, you know, want to aspire to intellect and push civilization forward, because a child or a youth can't really do that. The potential of that can, but now it's like, no, everything is marketed towards youth. So as a consequence, intellect and the adult mind has become passé. Any excuse to throw it in the trash heap, whether, you know, the the lexical excuse is, oh, well, it's patriarchal, or, the history is imbued with slavery, or anything, like any part of the past that we can learn from. And you mentioned people who have spent time in their past now becoming a great mathematician. We're not going to listen to them. Again, that's the past. We don't listen to the past. We're not informed of the past. And the danger is you don't learn from mistakes, and you don't learn from others' positive experience as well. So you're saying, I don't care. I'm going to just recycle my Groundhog Day from moment to moment. And then you get positive reinforcement from today's memes like, live in the moment, man. Don't look at the past. Don't look for your future. But it's really sleazy to tell people not to learn from their past and other people's past that can help them. The parental figure of someone who's made mistakes, and you don't even want to learn from someone's experience. And also you don't want to plan for tomorrow as well in just some sort of rudimentary way. Everyone's being calibrated to a childish now.
Yes, that's right. And I agree with that completely. I mean, it is utterly necessary if one is going to function as an adult in any kind of humane sense to have a sense of context for your life, right? And I take actually quite great exception with what I see as a very infantile way of looking at things and the, be here now kind of cliches. I mean, the reality is that we as living organisms are impossibly ancient. You are an impossibly ancient current representation of a thing that goes back hundreds of millions of years. You are a current manifestation of a billion-year-old process. Right? And that's literally encoded in your DNA. Like, that is who you are. It's like the interesting aspect of the human mind is that it seems to be the only thing in the universe, at least that we know of yet, that has the capacity to time bind and to simultaneously anticipate a future moment in the context of a past while experiencing the now. How's that for me preaching? But I think that's a effing big deal. And that anything that this whole like cliche of just live in the moment is really just a infantile regression to a pre-conscious way of living, and it's like there's nothing satisfying about that. That's not an interesting exercise, and it interestingly enough, because I do have a background in a lot of comparative religion and philosophy, like that's never been a part of any kind of spiritual practice either. Like that's a completely new, silly, hippie way of looking at trying to reach towards some kind of ultimate understanding. Like that's a new thing. It's a new thing, and I think a person would be good to really be quite critical in how they look at that being held up as a good idea.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking, I don't know if the right word is metaphysical, but in terms of today, people will only quite selfishly reference the past, and
That's
not
right.
in terms of, they reference the past to take, but not to give. So they won't reference literature so that then they can give from their mouth and their mind and share their words with others and communicate. They won't do that. Like I'm not going to give anything, but they will reference the past when they selfishly want to take something. Like they'll see some guy with a great body and they'll say, "Oh, dude, how did you get to where you are?" And then they'll listen to him reference the past of how there was years of training and diet and the steps, and they'll take notes. So if it's selfishly referencing this, how I can gain superficially, they'll reference the past. But the moment you tell them to be responsible for giving through the past, they're not interested.
Well, again, it comes back to that kind of relating that I talk about all the time. It's like you can either relate in this communal symbiotic manner, including with your past, or you can look at it as something to extract value from.
Yeah,
Right.
talk a little bit about that. I think it's your Martin Buber versus Aristotelian view, isn't it?
Well, yeah, that's right. And I mean, Martin Buber is kind of a big name in that kind of thing, but he's certainly not the only one. It's just that he's well known for it. But the idea isn't, Korzybski in General Semantics is going to say the same thing, is the Aristotelian worldview. And it's interesting, too, that largely as a reaction to earlier Greek philosophers that did not see the world this way, actually, like Parmenides or whatever, they saw it very differently. Much more in this relational matter that I'm talking about, that Aristotle made a big thing about causality and subject-object.
Which they use in psychology today.
Well, they do.
It's you listen to the literature in psychology, it's very narcissistic, everybody's an object.
Oh, that's right. And like that's a major beef if you get into the Jungian stuff in a rigorous and comprehensive manner. Like Jung thought that was the worst thing in the world. But again, Jung was heavily influenced by the early Greeks, not so much an Aristotelian worldview. Right? So like very, very relational, right? And was kind of allergic to a scientific method in general. Except that he needed to voice his exercises in that language, because otherwise it sounded like straight up Gnostic mysticism, right? I mean, that's just like he's quite forthright about that. It's like, and in many ways, in some of his letters to Freud, I'm getting out on a tangent, like Jung describes what he's trying to do is create a new religion for mankind through his philosophy. Like it's specifically in those words. Right, not create a science for therapy. Right?
Yes.
So
yes.
Because he's so concerned that of the dangerous effect of individuals becoming fixated on this idea of subject object, I it versus I and some other thing that has a complete and independent identity of its own, right? Especially other people, but you can draw that quite broadly, right? That would actually be the death of humanity. Like,
when we're so isolated, like now, it just reinforces that mode.
It sure does. That's right. And a person should take those warnings pretty seriously. I mean, I have certainly come to find that quite valuable. I mean, that's been a big concern in my life for sure. So like in a lot of ways, like in the Jungian sense, and I enjoyed discussing this because I don't think it's well represented a lot of times in some of the people that kind of popularize Jung right now. But his essential question, as I read it, is: does one actually have the ability? He would phrase it like this: does one have the ability to have a authentic relationship with the sacred, is his term, right? He would phrase it that way. I would not, but because I'm more of a atheistic sort. But his question is still legit. I would say that, the essential essence of other. Do you have that skill? Have you developed that skill in your life or not? Because that was the essential skill in, as he saw it, in becoming a mature human being. And it's interesting, the part of the attraction to that for me, again, comes from the funeral home experience, right? Because I saw that, in fact, many, if not most people, lack the basic ability to come to a authentic relationship with the reality that they inhabited. So that when they were faced with just the hard nuts of life, especially in a death moment, they simply didn't have the skill set to relate to life or other people in a manner that was constructive. They had never learned to do it. And I saw that. I saw it just terrifying.
I'm thinking you being exposed to the realities of death and sort of snapping the totality of life more into focus at such a younger age.
That's right.
Whereas most people don't experience it till they're well and truly hardened as human beings later in life.
Right.
I relate to, say, the passing of my father 6 months ago, how after that, life just completely got simpler for me.
Sure.
Completely just got so much simpler.
Do you feel that you have a more authentic relationship with life?
Oh, yeah. I remember standing over the grave when we buried him, and I just was saying to myself, like, no more bullshit. No more worrying about the mundane and, having friction about all these little things. And I mean, maybe I'm being naive, but like, given my conversations with you and your kind of centeredness as a guy, and I'm pretty sure other guys who watch your channel, they just self-evidently can see a guy that's not just talking about this shit, he's living it. And I can imagine some guys who are so far away from where you are and saying, how do I even approach 5% of what Quasimandias is or has or whatever? Not that you should be someone else, but the positive aspects of what might be helpful. It's that you might have just been exposed by accident to some things that helped you. And guys these days,
absolutely.
They're growing up looking at their screens. It's just a one trick pony worldview of life. It's so two-dimensional.
Until it comes and shits on you.
Yeah, until they take it away from you.
Yeah, and that's going to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the deal. That happens to everybody.
Well, I noticed I just had a low level of anxiety, more of a frustration, and it made me smile the other day, where last week my bank, where, you minimize everything. I'm not going to have multiple credit cards. I'm going to have one.
Sure.
And I use that to pay my bills and everything. So it's the central point. All of a sudden, my bank rings me last week, and they say, look, there's been some odd transactions. Someone's hacked your credit card. We're canceling it. We'll send you out another one. And for the next week, while I'm waiting for a new card to be posted, I can't pay for anything. I'm getting bills sent to me saying this is overdue. And then I just realizing, holy shit, this is how easily you can ruin someone's life.
Oh my God.
And I knew it,
incredibly fragile.
But I'm thinking of other people where their whole life is this. What happens if you don't enjoy books and they take your internet away from you? You don't have friends. You don't have entertainment. You're just an empty, lifeless person with, an awful superego kicking you.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, it's interesting today. It's really interesting.
There's a quote I remember by, I forget who. Might be the Jungian scholar Peter Kingsley, who I think a lot of. I would recommend Peter Kingsley to anybody who wanted to get a taste of the authentic Jung. It's very scholarly, but it'll give you a kick in the nuts. Like it gives you insight into the Jungian experience, but not the safe one, if that's interesting.
Yeah, because with Jung, everyone just I think it's today's generation of sound bites, and that's the degree to their patience. They'll think of Freud as the guy who wants to hook up with his mother, and Jung as the guy who just makes people into archetypes or objects, and they just kind of go down the line and they put people into pigeonholes, but they don't actually explore their works.
Not at all. I mean, and there's just this real preconception. Like, he's been just so sanitized that it's ridiculous. Like, he's more akin to some kind of character like Aleister Crowley than he is like a real psychologist. I mean, if you actually read his material, right? I mean, definitely, like, the Jungian experience is one of deliberate, personal, firsthand, experiential tumbling down the rabbit hole as far as you possibly can go. And That's not for everybody.
Yeah, I was going to say that I could immediately see a lot of dangers for the average person doing that.
Well, I mean, for not a small part of his life when he was experimenting this, he slept with a gun next to his bed because he was afraid he'd go nuts and hurt his family. Like, this is not commonly known, that you are literally exploring your psyche in such a deep manner that you are afraid that you will go nuts and you'll have to shoot yourself. Like that's not part of the narrative that you hear all the time, right?
Yeah. It's interesting that on one hand, if you don't think at all, that apathy can be safe. Like you see a lot of guys who just like football and beer. Sure. And they've got a wife and 2.3 kids, and you can see them, they're quite content. And being apathetic can actually just, be a stress reducer. And you've got your routines that are comfortable and so on and so forth. But on the other hand, if you're not lucky enough to have your sort of just, unconscious routines led around sympathetically by, the life that you just happen to have found, and you're lucky enough to have found a wife that fits into it. On the other hand, it can, if you don't have everything working for you, can really, really pound your psychology.
Oh, that's right.
So on the other hand, if you go too deep, it can ruin your relationships too.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt. I mean, that's precisely what I was trying to get at, and it gives me some ideas to reflect on that, because, I used to, through my dad, I'd go out and do like handyman work for a lot of the old ladies in the community, right? And I remember one time I was out fixing some old ladies' windows. I was probably 16 years old, and they have to chat your ass off, of course. That was part of the job. And this, real pioneer woman, but she'd had, I don't know, 5 or 6 kids and 10,000 grandkids and all this kind of stuff. And she was at that point. So I would have been, I don't know, probably 16. So this would have been the early 80s. And so, she'd have been born, circa 1900 or something. Right. And at that point in time, so that the Indian kids came into town on horseback sort of thing, very super frontier, really. And she was just the happiest old woman that she'd ever met in her life. And she was astonishingly ignorant. And she hadn't read anything but, some bits of the Bible. She'd never been out of their town. She'd never had, everything for her had worked out great, right? None of her kids had ever been sick. None of her grandkids had ever been sick. Nobody's ever had a problem. It's like her entire thing had just been lucky as hell, right? And she was very smug and thought she was very wise, right? So, not being thoughtful is lovely if you're really lucky, okay? Yeah, it's awesome. Who signed me up for being a dumbass? But privileged. That's the nicest way to live your life, okay? But you can't count on that, is the thing, right? And the terrifying thing that I have seen over and over again is there are a lot of people that confuse just having dumb luck for having it figured out. Okay? And when tragedy comes, it's different. The number of people that I've seen, for example, when I was in high school, so it was very lived experience, right? So very small high school. I was 80 in my graduating class, and on graduating night, people went out drinking, and 6 of them died in a car accident, right? Small town. Parents are not prepared for that.
Yeah, they'd probably be more prepared than parents today, though.
I don't know. The reality is that you are going to need to have a pretty well constructed and robust psyche to deal with tragedies of that kind of scale.
What I was just thinking about is, say, a very simple small town philosophy
Mm-hmm.
you grow up in that. I can see that small town philosophy moving to the big city and being able to cope much better than if you did the reverse. If you put
Yeah.
someone from a big city and you get them to sort of cope psychologically with the world in the more simple small town way.
Well, I mean, without it, yeah, I think what you're getting at is that there is kind of an immediacy to the life that comes from a rural, especially kind of farm living kind of thing, right? That you do. It's pretty clinical to get your hamburger at the grocery store and have your garbage swept off the street and not really have to actually visit any of the kind of uglier things in life.
It's less
And
complex, yeah.
well, yeah, I mean that's right. And if you've grown up in an environment where reality is that you're more intimately involved with kind of the less elegant aspects of living,
Well,
right?
and also in those environments, death isn't hiding like it is in the big city.
That's right. Exactly. I mean, it isn't hiding in the big city either, but it's more sanitized and it's kept from view, right?
Yeah, it's
So
given
like,
a paint job, a colourful paint job.
it's given a great paint job a lot of times, right? So, yeah, I mean, if you're the Undertaker in a big city, you see it too. I mean, that's one of the things. It's like I don't know how my dad has kept himself in such good mental health, really. Like, you wouldn't believe the tragedies that man has seen. Like, imagine doing that. Imagine burying 3 people a day for 35 years. And knowing the story.
And
right?
and in your eyes, I mean, you don't have to get personal, but has he, in your eyes, been sort of, it didn't affect him in the way that it limited his openness or anything like that, in the way that you see, say, veterans, they close off and don't want to talk about what happened?
He, fortunately, in temperament, is probably not as thoughtful and sensitive as I am by nature. So that's been a blessing to him or for him, because I would have found it probably more difficult than he. I mean, I can't read the man's mind, but without a doubt, you can't come away with that without a hard view of a certain kind of darkness. I mean, you can, and I've seen some of this myself, right? It can be really astonishing. It's what I'm trying to say. It is almost impossible to plumb the depths of the disregard that one human being will hold another in. Like, that's a bottomless pit. As a bottomless pit. I remember my dad coming home from, this would be a pretty classic MGTOW kind of thing. So, I mean, my dad was not only the small town undertaker, but a small town, so he's the coroner too, right? So he actually has, what that means is he has the legal authority to declare a person dead. And in a rural environment, it wasn't unusual that somebody would die in their home, right? And, so like that would happen. And a lot of times we knew people and they'd be like, my grandma has died and she's, can you come get her, right? So, for example, this is a true story. So he gets a call from someplace out of town here, and it's a family he doesn't know. And trailer house out on the frickin' butte someplace. And he goes up and knocks on the door because he got the call that somebody had died in the house, and goes out there to see what's going on. And here's kind of this middle-aged, very heavy woman sitting on the couch, and they're watching TV. And the kids are right there in the room, sitting there, and they're watching like some comedy or some shit, right? TV. Literally eating frozen pizza sitting on the couch. And he's like, is this the right place? Yes, yes. She's like, my husband's died, and he's in the bedroom. And my dad's like, okay. And he goes into the bedroom, and her husband has shot himself in the face with a 12 gauge.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah. So
I thought you were going to say he just died
Oh,
naturally
no,
in
no,
his sleep.
no. He'd blown his brains completely out all over the ceiling in here, in this place.
Okay,
Right.
maybe I'm being too charitable. I'm thinking it was that all a coping mechanism, but no. Like if the children and everyone else are doing it,
Everybody's sitting there eating frozen pizza on the couch, and Dad has shot himself in the bedroom. Right? So, like, it's this kind of stuff that can give you a perspective, right?
most people would say if they heard that story, they'd say, "Nah, someone made that up."
No.
Jeez.
Totally true. So, and then, of course, he has to call the cops because this is not a death scene anymore. Right? So, like, shit like that. I mean, I've got hundreds of stories like that.
Yeah, no need for
No.
a forensic coroner to determine the cause of death.
No, it's pretty obvious, man. But I mean, just you just can't believe, actually. I mean, unfortunately, I think you're forced to understand that, and this gets back to the Jungian question again. Does a person have the ability to relate to the sacred in other? The kids and this woman, no, they did not. Because the sacred and her husband was blowing all over the ceiling in the room next door. Right? And she had zero relationship with that.
Yeah.
Right?
You could almost fill in the lines and say, well, I might be able to guess about some of the reasons why he did what he did.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's hard to know. But I mean, unfortunately, I think that most of the crises that we face in our culture and around the world today are absolutely because, no, most of us do lack the ability to relate to other. And you don't have to throw in the pithy term sacred, but it's not a bad one if you don't want to put some kind of ridiculous, religious spin on it, because it doesn't need a religious spin. It just means that which is kind of uniquely valuable in other people or other things or other anything. Right? If you have the capacity to relate to that, and if you've developed the skill to do that, which is the most important thing in human life, if you put in the time to do it, your interface with life will be utterly different than it will be for other people.
I think the interfacing with life has been hamstrung by certain helpful words as bridges to sort of understanding being bastardized, co-opted. So, you say love these days and people roll their eyes. You say masculinity, people roll their eyes. You say spirituality, people roll their eyes. So the language by which to build the bridge to understand these things in a meaningful way, or you say in a relational way, it's like if you can't say them, or when you say them, they're always clownish. It just keeps hamstringing people and making their mental states darker and darker, because there's no language to sort of help you see things clearly. Because the moment you try and go down there with language, it's like, oh, this is a joke. You're a joke. Be positive. And any kind of helpful spirituality comes off as a meme.
Oh, that's right. Well, I mean, and that has been a major obstacle for me in my life. That's been huge, because it didn't take very long. See, I mean, I got started with this stuff because of my background, because it wasn't bullshit, man.
Yeah.
Like, I needed some answers. Okay, and you go and look for answers, and you find that the people that are out there marketing themselves as the people with answers are bullshit artists.
Car salesmen.
Oh my God. And they have no authentic first-person relationship to any of this shite that they talk about. And it just becomes conspicuous. So the natural mistake that I made for many years was to simply assume that those topics were bullshit. Okay? Which I have been forced to learn are not. But they are dominated by bullshit artists, right? Which is a very different thing. It wasn't that the material itself was unworthy. It was that unworthy people were often the ones that would peddle it.
Yeah, I think people are using words these days the way they use fashion. They dress up what comes out of their mouth so it sounds a certain way.
Absolutely.
But the meaning is like if they say a thing, the effect it has on others and how they can manipulate people is all that matters, not the actual thing in and of itself, what the word actually means. And I noticed over the years, I found myself less and less to utter meaningful words like love, especially in relationships, because I know what it means to me, but I know what it's not the same thing as what it means to this woman standing in front of me. And I don't want to communicate falsely because she doesn't get what I mean. So I found being able to even utter authentic words is really, really hard, as people are getting sort of, what's the word, conditioned with today's kind of lexical ambiguity. Like you hear women, I don't know if you've seen, you probably don't even care about, there's a chick, Adina something or other, floating around the internet, and a lot of people are making response videos to her. And she's your typical sort of flower child of today's era that's hooking up left, right, and center with men. She's getting pregnant, and the ambiguity of her language that allows her to be irresponsible is like, I'm just following my truth, and the energy of the universe, and life is love, and it's kind of like, oh Jesus Christ, you're avoiding a lot of responsibility.
Yeah, in the practice of general semantics, that kind of word use is called a semantic reaction. Okay, so what that means is it's simply a placeholder, symbolic and placeholder for a emotive expression, and it is devoid of content.
Yeah.
Okay, so like a lot of people do use either religious terminology or, love being a good example, simply as a vocalization of an emotive state, right? With no comprehension whatsoever as to what that means, right?
You're not thinking in real time right now as I'm speaking to you. I'm not consciously thinking about what that word means to me in the context of this conversation I'm having now. It's pulled out of like a pigeonhole, like a one-liner or a clever quote that will make me feel smarter or get me out of a situation.
That's right. And it's an extraordinarily dangerous and sloppy use of language. And I have railed against that for my entire life. Here's an example of why. Out of college, one of the first things I got into, and I think I've mentioned that, is working in the juvenile justice program in the western states here in the United States. And in particular, a community that I went had a lot of pedophilia in it, which is not infrequent in religious communities. And so I had the unfortunate reality of being immersed in that jolly whole aspect of human life too, right? And one of the astonishing things, and this is actually even becoming culturally normalized today, to which I'm just astounded by, sitting there with people that are pedophiles, okay? They're offenders, they're convicted offenders, and they are absolutely unrepentant, and they quite frequently feel beset by persecution or something for being convicted of what society sees as a crime, because from their point of view, they love children. See, the pedophile does not see the abuse of the child as an act of abuse. They see it as an act of love, because they don't have an operative definition of what love is. It's a feeling state, right? And because of that, just like in my last kind of conversations about anger, it never gets past the point of being thought of whether it's justifiable or not. It's purely just a projection of a feeling state. And the feeling state to everybody always feels valid, right? Okay, so yeah, right? Then that's in essence what it comes down to. So they feel genuinely that their actions towards that child are loving. And they're like, why do people, like, I'm just trying to be a loving person. And that's the danger of thinking about things from this completely semantic reaction, sublingual manner, is that, well, there's no way to analyze the merits of any of that. Does that make any sense? Was I clear about trying to communicate that? So that kind of speaking is astonishingly irresponsible and sloppy, and it becomes just a perpetual source of conflict in people. It's like, I have a right to my feelings.
And especially that we're not in front of people to sort of gauge their facial expressions and subcommunications and have a more tactile relationship with people. It's so disconnected that, words just become sound. Like now we're talking via a microphone.
Right.
You're not in front of me. And so you and I have the benefit of growing up pre-internet. But if every noise I make now needs to elicit a positive response for me to even have a social life, the context of words don't matter very much. All that matters is every noise that comes out of my mouth better help me make friends. It's kind of really peculiar for me.
Well, it is. And, like in the case of that statement we just said, like, I have a right to my feelings. I'm very often the kind of person that will spout that probably can't define I or have or a right. Feelings, like practically none of those things have an operative definition very often in people's minds. So, like, really, what are they saying there? Well, they're just screaming that they want to assert.
Yep.
That's it. So, like, that's why I, again, how do you deal with that? And that's why I kind of like to advocate, as we move forward in the world towards a more kind of evolved way of relating, especially between the sexes or whatever, this kind of radical notion of consent. Like, I mean, obviously in sexual ethics, we get hammered that, but why not everywhere?
It's going to be even more difficult than it always was throughout history between men and women. But at least there was a bit more maturity. That was where it was calibrated from. We knew that, the youthful experience of, boys and girls and, adolescents and whatever, bumping into each other was kind of just kind of chaotic, but they'll kind of find their way through falling over and so forth. But the real sort of meat and potatoes is when you become an adult, you've gone through the entree of fumbling around in your teens. But then it becomes the actual meal. But now it's the way we're relating, that deep hunger for the opposite sex, the biological pull is greater than ever, because it's so much more mystical, I think, than it ever was for you and I. There was always the feminine mystique, which is basically we didn't understand the female because we weren't, yet we were attracted. But now it's wholly mythical. Because you don't even see a woman. She's this mythical thing. It's almost like an object on eBay that you want to purchase and you don't know how to go about doing it. You don't talk to them in real life. You're not out with your friends at and a group of your friends talks to a group of girls, and while you find a girl attractive, you're not noticing her expressions and whether she looks at you. You're not noticing your friends, the confident one that goes up to a girl and you want his confidence. You're not sort of interpreting these things and trying to better yourself in the real world. You're sitting alone behind a screen and you're screaming at the world like a child. It's really kind of, it's odd. I feel sympathy for guys. I don't know how I would have how I would have coped in this environment, to tell you the truth.
I don't know. I mean,
for instance, just before that, before I lose the thought, I remember you talking in your, I think, previous one or two videos. You gave the example of the couple fighting over the ham sandwich. All right. And I was just thinking, your example when you mentioned that if the guy who felt bad in the interaction where they weren't communicating properly, and weren't seeing the point of view of the other, simply expressed, I'm feeling hurt. And you said that his partner would probably come over and give him a hug.
Sure.
My first reaction is, in today's world, with the way men and women are, like, that's a very.
You don't think so?
I don't think so.
Assuming if it's you're assuming it's sincere,
Yes, but also given what we just talked about, how people don't calibrate themselves from an honest point of view, a relational point of view. It's a very solipsistic, ends justify the means point of view.
Right.
So I'm just wondering how realistic. I'm not saying it shouldn't be calibrated in the direction that you're describing, and especially if you're self-reflective enough, you've done the work, you're more of a whole individual, the chances are the person you let into your life will be more receptive to seeing your point of view. I agree. But I'm thinking about guys today and girls today that judge each other not on values, but on transient superficiality and all that, and not wanting to commit and all the fear-based, how realistic that is, and whether it's, unless a guy does the work and is stepping more in the realm of, say, what you and I are interested in talking about and trying to apply it into our lives, there's more of a chance that he's going to pick a person that might be able to relate to him like this. Did I kind of make sense?
Yeah, you did. And the way I would reply to that, because I think that you may well be correct a lot of the time, but I would say that anyone who has skills of relating that are that poor is really fucked. I have a central conviction that I've been uncomfortably forced to come to through reflecting on this material, and that is this: that the skill of relating is a global skill, meaning that your ability to relate to perhaps a woman is the same skill that you have the ability to relate to your own mind and to your environment and to your friends and to everything else in life. I believe it's a global skill. And if it is not developed, you won't have it anywhere. So if you are the kind of person who is, for whatever reason, completely unable to relate to other people, withdrawing and trying to think that you are some kind of lone wolf superhero isn't a solution, because you will still be equally as alienated within your own inner dialogues as you will with your external dialogues. And because of that, I think it's a very dangerous thing for MGTOW men to just simply say, oh, I'm just going to walk away from women, because the fact is most of us would have not put one bit of effort into relating had it not been for some kind of sexual drive in our lives. All right. And in fact, that female other is a very major gateway for the male personality to be forced, largely against its will, to step outside of a solipsistic way of looking at the world and to develop the capacity to relate internally and externally. And I think it's an astonishing mistake. I can understand that it might be a necessary mistake at times and for certain people. I mean, I certainly understand that, but it can be a crippling lack of opportunity too, with real consequences, permanent developmental consequences. And if one understands that, they might find that there are other means at which they may go around or go about developing the skill to relate. Like, that doesn't need to be the only way, right? But it just happens to be the most typical gateway for most men. But don't make the dumb mistake in thinking that you can just not relate to shit.
Yeah, it cuts off a very essential...
it's suicide.
It cuts off essential part of a man's need for adventure too.
Oh, without a doubt. Well, I mean, it'll just drive you into straight psychosis.
Yeah,
Like
it's
you
kind of
can't.
like men kind of calibrating themselves towards complete safety and
Yep.
wondering why life is so empty. They feel hollow. Life is more depressive. It's cut off. They're alone. It's just like they kind of shut the cage door. And it's not that, the first reaction is, well, given the laws, given this, yeah, I understand the realities, but you don't relate to people, friends, women, lovers that would cause those dangers to even approach reality. And I'm not saying there's a guarantee, but
Well, no doubt.
sorry,
Yeah,
go
no
ahead.
doubt. Oh, well, I mean, it's just, like I think that's just a silly cop out, honestly. I mean, if you have sensible emotional boundaries, you're smart enough to do something like get yourself a vasectomy if you're so inclined. It's not an effing big deal, man. And you are largely isolated from those risks.
Oh, it's a big deal if you don't know yourself and you do it.
Well, yeah. Well, so is getting on a 1200cc sport bike. Right? Or a lot of things. Like a lot of that stuff will get you killed if you're incompetent. If you don't know what you're doing. So like that's just the nature of experiencing life. Life isn't a safe place.
Well, I've been pondering that over the last decade, and people have mentioned it to me. People I've talked to in the manosphere, especially because most of the other people in my life are fairly normie, and they'll say, you're a fairly switched on guy. Why don't you just ghost women? Why don't you just ghost society? And I was thinking, for the same reasons that I have my head in books. Like,
Sure.
I don't want safety, but I'm not reckless. I want to sort of make my world clear, and I want it to make sense, but I don't want it sanitized. I'm all for minimalism in an attempt to clarity, but
Right.
not as an attempt to for safety, for going back to mother, to sort of I can't it just feels like I'm touching a sticky doorknob to sort of go back to that childhood safety, because I have got a lot of child in me, that exploratory, creative, don't tell me what to do, why, questioning kind of part of me, but it's also the same part that's interested in things too. So it's kind of not vacillating, but oscillating between the two.
Well, I mean, there is the other aspect of it too, that courage is a skill that has to be exercised. And most of us wouldn't, as males, wouldn't have any of that either, except that we started out stupid.
And you haven't died yet.
And haven't died yet. So, I mean, if you don't exercise the capacity to act in a courageous and adventurous manner, you will lose it. And what happens then if, again, the world comes and sits on you and demands that you need to act in a courageous manner, and you have completely neglected your capacity for it? You've not disciplined yourself to maintain a certain level of operative courage whatsoever for years. What will happen to you then? Right? Like, these are real pressing concerns.
And it's also the taking small steps towards courage. I've mentioned before in videos, I keep pushing guys to take recoverable risks.
Yeah.
Because you tend to feel a lot more alive when you come through them, or at least learn something that may have not been a fruitful direction. At least you apathetically know what you don't want anymore, which is
Right.
the default for human beings. Women are bad, no. Society's bad, no. But there's very little of the cataphatic yes.
Right.
But at the same time, when you face the fears that you should, and the only reason you're not is because of fear itself. Like,
Sure.
if you wrote it down on paper and say, okay, what am I really afraid of? And then you actually see on paper, reading it, looking at the words as a third person, you're going, oh, you're just a fucking coward.
Right.
Because on the other side of that is the incremental little risks that reward you with feeling more and more alive every time you exercise that muscle. Sensible safety, basic parameters, fine, but you need room to play. Build your boundaries, but you need space to play. And I think that these guys who are they're sanitizing their space so much that I feel like there's no oxygen for them, and it's safe, and they'll be able to barely breathe. But the real test is when you go to sleep at night, when your screen is not switched on, when you're not talking to someone through a microphone, when you honestly speak to yourself and the voice in your head and you're really reflecting on your own, do you honestly feel much more comfortable with your life, content, optimistic, or are you more pessimistic and afraid?
I mean, to me, and again, I have a biased attitude about it. I don't think the world's a particularly safe place. I think life is short and it's a precious opportunity. And if a person isn't going to live it, they may as well just get off the fucking bus. Like, I just seriously. And because what is the point? The point it is not necessarily to be safe. There's nothing to be learned. There's no essential relationship with the universe that you live in that. You're actually avoiding that.
Yeah, there's no responsibility for the how. All you're concerned with is the what of safety, and that's all I need.
Yeah. And, it just doesn't have to be some big dramatic thing. Like, that's a mistake also that people make. It's not like, you have to be the first person that snorkels to the bottom of the Pacific Ocean or some dumb thing like that. What you do need to do is confront whatever it is that life presents you with in an authentic manner where you relate to it. That's what you need to do, not just perpetually by hiding under the blankets. Right? That's it. That's like, you have very little control of the adventure that life or the universe or your circumstances is going to provide you with. Like, you don't have any idea from one minute to the next. And most of it's just happenstance. So that the only thing a person can really do is just simply have the attitude of readiness.
Yeah, it's kind of like a train going by, and all you can do is exercise your grip so you can grab on.
That's precisely right. But you won't have it if you don't practice it. Period. This is the terrifying thing that guys in the MGTOW community should ask themselves. Back to that topic, is like, what the hell would happen to you if you had spent your entire life screaming hypergamy from the top of your lungs, and you happened to be out someplace doing something, whatever, and you just happened to meet the unicorn.
And you screw it up.
And you completely botched it. Right? What then? Like, knowing that you had put no preparation whatsoever. Now, I'm not saying you have to do this, but what would happen if that were to happen? Imagine that. But because of your ideology or a particular view of the world, you just whatever. And, well, that would suck, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and unfortunately, like I've met far too many men I've chatted to online, and you kind of go there wanting just to have a not a defensive conversation.
Sure.
A sensible one. Yeah, okay, the laws exist, society's like this, but what about you? How are you living? What do you think should be the way? So on and so forth. More sort of like a inward out point of view, how you're going to sort of, in your words, relate to the world. And so I mentioned it on a video a few months ago, I think, where I was talking to one of these guys, and I mentioned how my group of high school friends, most of them are in marriages that they've been in for like 15 to 20 years now. Mm-hmm. And happy, content. I mean, I can't read their minds, but from the surface and the way my friends talk when just the guys get together, they seem like they're fairly content with their lives, and some guys are really, really happy.
Sure.
And I was saying how I don't bring up any red pill stuff around the guys, especially. There's maybe one or two, if I'm one-on-one, they broach the subject. I'll, let them know my point of view, but I'm not trying to religiously convert them or anything. And for the most part, I don't actually talk about any of this stuff with them.
You bet.
Because there's no point. I don't want to sort of not pull them down to my level is not the point, but there's no point. It's not going to be useful for them. They're lucky. They're living good lives. And I remember talking to some young guy online who was you could tell he was very well versed in the manosphere, phrases, how to talked very monotone, very stoically, intelligent guy. But he's saying, no, you should have actually told him that his wife, she's got the potential to leave him and to set himself up and make sure that, he should probably leave her before she has the chance to do it. And just this whole paranoid. And I'm saying, what are you talking about, man? It's kind of like my friend has a good life. Like you could call him ignorant, but like, we mentioned this at the start, like some of that ignorance is luck, but half your luck, man. You don't need to sort of have this in your mental space, because for the last 15 to 20 years, it's proven itself not to be needed. You don't need this paranoia in your life. It's not paranoia. You don't need this information in your life, because it's got more potential to ruin the tranquility of what you have, your family and everything. And there's no reason to cast this onto a woman that's done nothing to deserve it.
Well, that's right. And besides, the fact is that all of life, not just the male-female dynamic, operates as a sort of fishing expedition, right? Like all of it, right? You go out there and it's never a sure deal. Right? Whether it's a job, or whether it's what you want to do on vacation, or whether you want to date Chicky Poo, or whether it's you want to have this. If you want to eat that Chinese food, all of those things can go south. None of them are guaranteed. Sometimes it works out great. Sometimes it does not, right? And certainly you can take a statistical analysis and say, well, this is very unlikely for that to work out, right? But again, that's a poor understanding, and it's an erroneous understanding of how risk really operates in the world, right? Like it's typical, right? Like, and a more intelligent way of looking at that would be, don't take risks for no reward. Right?
Yes, yeah.
Right. Don't take even silly little risk for no reward, right? Like if the Chinese food doesn't smell very good, don't eat it, because there's minimal reward in it. And if there's a risk of you like having rocket fuel kind of out-of-body experiences for the next 4 days, don't do it. There's no payoff.
I think that's the overcompensation of some guys without wanting to face themselves, is that they're embarrassed not to have any boundaries. So they allow the wrong person to just continue, and they have absolutely no voice, no expression of their thoughts, no ability to say no, and to stand for anything for themselves. And so I think that kind of overcompensation is this aggressive macho, well, all women and unicorns and so on. And yeah, like statistically, we know what's out there. But also, if you're driving yourself nuts by really wanting something and then getting on a podium and saying you don't really want it, and splitting your personality that way, it doesn't. I don't see it as a nice way of living, where you respect everyone else supposedly acting the way they seem to want to and what they want to take from you, and you never say no, and you just give and give and give. I think that overcompensation of casting all women as this, or societies like this, or there's no point, and being very nihilistic, I think that's kind of just an easy cop-out for being, I don't want to say cowardly, because I don't want to sort of belittle what guys are faced with today. No, but it's too simplistic. And it takes the life out of living.
Well, you're bullshitting yourself. See, that again, it's back to that. It's not really a conversation about factual anything. It's not a matter of truth or falsehood. It's a matter of creating a narrative for yourself that creates the attitude you want to have.
Yes.
Right. And like, as poisonous as bullshit is in larger society, don't bullshit yourself. Bullshitting yourself is disastrous. Right. Well, I mean, it is. I mean,
well, if you're bullshitting yourself, you're more inclined to soak up the bullshit of others because you're used to the language and it seems like it's genuine.
Well, that's it. And again, it all fits into the same thing that we're discussing. You bullshit yourself very readily if you have a very poor ability to relate to your own mind. Because you have crap boundaries with yourself.
Yes. And you hear guys saying, "Oh, she did this, she did that, she did this," and it's kind of like, how long did this keep going on for? And did you not notice anything? Did you not speak up as though and it just is obvious that they were passive?
Well, right, exactly. I mean, that's going to be the risk. I mean, the risk is, in the world that we live in, if you're going to approach other people, and it doesn't matter to me whether it's employers or chickie poo or whatever, the default position is most people have a very poor ability to relate to other people, and they look at other people as stuff to exploit. The chances are that anybody that you meet in the world is going to have that attitude towards you. And because the easiest way to lift your wallet is giving you a hug up front for the first little bit, they are going to conceal that from you. And there is no way of knowing whether another person actually has intent towards a relational communing with you or exploitation until you put in some time. There's no way around that, because it'll look the same for the first 6 months.
Yeah, there's a difference between paranoia and maturely having your eyes open. Sure. And respecting yourself and your boundaries and listening to the way that a person acts and whatever. And even if the thoughts appear like you might be being paranoid, clarify them by asking the person. So if you notice a woman might be acting hypergamously or whatever, like the red pill stuff starts to seep in, which is not bad. Like, it's very informative. This is the thing that guys miss. It can now help you see red flags where before you didn't, because there was no language, there was no experience, there was no mentorship from guys who had experience who could tell you, when you see the clouds coming, rain will probably follow. And so when you see that in women, you can probably, to clarify whether rain's coming, you cut it off at the pass and you openly communicate what you see. She knows that you see things that may or may not be accurate. She might not know that she's communicating something that appears negative. But if you you don't care about that language, if you don't really care about the information within the manosphere circles that could help you express what you see or what you know about female nature and really discuss it with the person, she might not mean what you think she's expressing or showing. And it's great to clarify that rather than assuming, and as you said, a good friend or lover could sort of slip through your fingers because of your sort of your adherence to safety over everything, safety over exploration and adventure.
Well, that's right, and it also gives you some ability to try to analyze the situation when the inevitable misunderstandings occur. I mean, remember that any given woman in your life is a human being too, right? She's dealing with the same issues that you are. She's finding it equally as difficult to try to navigate the ability to relate to other as you are. I mean, that's the facts. She's been stuffed full of a bunch of crap, just like you've been stuffed full of a bunch of crap. She's trying to shed it too. But the fact is, female nature, human nature aside, there's just a handful of ways in which people approach that, right? She could be just a right ass and doesn't care. I mean, that's possible. It could be that she really does care, but she's not skilled. That's different, right? It could be that she loves the hell out of you, but she has chemical imbalances in her head.
Yeah, but then there's also the self-respecting nature of like, not my problem as well. I can't.
Well, no. I mean, I'm not getting into what the person's response would be, but I mean, it can be a number of different things of what's going on there.
I see. It's not just a defensive.
That's not I'm getting it at all, because your response to whatever the misunderstanding might be, And of course, it goes both ways. And we might not be relating because of precisely the same reasons we have them ourselves, right? Could be that too, right? So now we have 6 vectors, right? All right. But I mean, that's better than just thinking you had a fight.
Yes.
Right? Okay. Because then you have at least 6 different strategies that could be applied if you wanted to retain the union. I mean, most of them can be worked through if people are willing to do it. That's a big if. But the strategy for working through any of those is different. And if you're applying the wrong strategy to something else, then it won't have a positive outcome. So like having some conversant knowledge in like what's actually going on, like again my ham sandwich example, right? Which is, like that the point I'm trying to make is that's not a fight, right? That you can encounter, like there's a very big difference in a couple who is having a disagreement about something that actually happened, as opposed to a couple where one person is having a reaction because of some emotive eruption. Like those are not the same thing. Right? And the way that one deals with those things are completely different.
Yeah. And sometimes it's difficult to discern the two. Some people are overly sympathetic, and in the people-pleasing sense, they'll never say no, and they'll hamster wheel their way in terms of excuses. Oh, well, she didn't mean it, or he didn't mean it, or their childhood, or they had a hard day at work, and so forth. So you can go the other way too.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's a very difficult thing to ethically navigate. I mean, assuming that your intention is to be loving, right?
And assuming that you communicate as well.
Yeah, well, that's it. Like I think I mentioned that. Like I'd worked with some astonishingly mentally disabled kids back in the day when I did that, and it's like I had a very influential prof that worked with me who really was quite valuable in that score. And he says, never, ever, like, be very careful not to talk down to people, and don't participate in any delusional paranoia that they might have. Don't do it. Right? Which was really good advice, because like a lot of practitioners do. They try to build rapport by like pretending that they have some understanding of these other people's states. And he was like, no, that's the worst thing you do, because what you're doing is you're validating the thing that makes them unable to relate.
Yeah, today it's kind of like a position of authority. Yeah, I understand you, and today it's kind of like, let it out. You need to, and I was talking to Spetsnaz about this. He's sick of the modern therapy industry where they fetishize making a person emote, and they'll get together after sessions, when they have round tables at the beginning or at the end of the day, and they'll say, oh, it was a great session, I made him sort of, he broke down and he really let it out. I think we really made progress. And he's thinking, you just made him relive these things. I didn't see any progress in what you just mentioned. Well,
that's right. Yeah, that's right. And there isn't good evidence that has any therapeutic value, at least as I'm aware of, at least in the modern sense. Like to just emote, if anything, re-entrenches the emoting. That's my understanding. So like I haven't seen that much to convince me otherwise.
Yeah, I suggest to guys that last resort should be therapy. Your first should be friends, people around you, people that you can talk to. And therapy, like I think it's valuable, especially where you've exhausted a lot of other avenues.
Yeah. I mean, that's how I see it. I mean, it's important for me to clarify that, I mentor guys who are victims of intimate partner violence here. But I don't do that professionally. Like, I'm a boat builder, right? So like this is simply I do because a lot of guys don't have any other option. And it's not something I do professionally or for money or whatever. It's just that there is no voice. There's no place you can go. So I just hang that out a little bit.
No, you're
right?
just trying to be a good human being.
That's all there is to it. No, I'm a tradesman, really. But part of the reason I do that is because I do see that need. Like I absolutely saw that when I kind of did it professionally, like working with disabled or the juvenile justice program. It was like there was no help for young guys, like just nothing. Like it.
Do you think that today, especially, it's so fashionable to pathologize everything that it's almost a cowardly way to avoid yourself and take responsibility, and gives you the sanction to manipulate people? So what I mean by that is you have a lot of people denying being reflective and responsible by saying, well, I was diagnosed with Asperger's, or I was diagnosed with this. So it's like, well, I can't modify my behavior. Sorry, there's nothing I can do about it because there's a scientific or clinical name for it. Whereas before it's like, no, it's ambiguous. So you have to do the work and quit being an arsehole.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I mean, there certainly can be value in having a operative explanation for the mechanism by which a certain behavior is exhibited, right? Right? Because, in some people's case, it may be simple habit. In other people's cases, it can literally be a kind of seizure in their brain, right? And they're different. Like it can be chemical imbalances. It can be all of those things together, right? So like there is value in that kind of stuff insofar as it goes. I think there's a lot more value in knowing those kinds of things about yourself than there is in knowing them about other people.
Yes.
Because you have just a different interest in that. Right.
Yeah, you're more courageous in determining everyone else.
Well, sure, right. So like, the knowledge itself is not of any kind of, it's not a negative thing. But I do agree with where you're leading with that, which there is an entire industry. Like, I just am absolutely astonished at, how many thousands of videos are there about how to know the 9 things about your narcissistic ex? Yes, right? Right? And that there's, and like all of them have 100,000 views. And I'm like, well, besides the fact, who gives a rat's ass? Like, certainly, like, go through the 9 things once, right? And learn that. And that's just awesome. But why do you need to revisit that?
I think the categorization makes people feel more certain about, they can avoid their own judgments by categorizing a person they might feel uncomfortable with, or they might exhibit a lot of those traits. But it's like, well, I see them and I've got your number, buddy.
Sure.
Whereas you avoid the responsibility of, well, just don't be around this person.
Yeah. Well, that's it, right? They can be attempts to try to get permission to validate a decision that you want to make, right? Or evade. Yeah, more typically, I think when you're exploring about your ex, explore the role that you may have played in the symbiotic creation of that relationship.
I want to actually, thinking about that, I want to explore some of that a bit more in terms of the categorization of people, whether it's pathologizing or categorizing, all women are like that, hypergamy, sure. These kind of aspects of categorizing certainty in life and not dancing with it, as we've sort of intimated like recently. We're not interested in doing the dance. We're interested in a distance, naming things, and then like someone collecting bugs, putting them in a jar and slapping a label on them and so forth. Guys being like sports fans and watching football and analyzing statistics and naming things and that confidence as opposed to, going out and kicking the football.
Well, I mean, the major problem that you get into with stuff of psychological content is that it's not scientific. Like, I mean, if you're talking about a personality disorder and it's not like you're talking about geology or granite, that you define granite as, quartz, mica, and calcite, right?
Well, it goes back to that object interpretation of psychology, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And these are traits that are described more in a manner of narrative than anything else. There's nothing psychological about any of this. Even for the big shit like schizophrenia, there's not like a test for it. Like you can't draw a blood sample and say, "Oh yeah, you're schizophrenic." Right? Like these are explanations. They masquerade as scientific categories, but they're not.
And they make you feel good. They're bad or broken. I'm not. I feel better.
Sure. So it's a different kind of bullshit, right? The point is it's not. It's the unspoken assumption is that these categorizations are accurate and useful. Okay. I don't think you can take that very far a lot of the time.
Yeah, I think a lot of people look at the categorizations as substitutes for their own process of what they value.
Well, that's right.
So
now,
you tell me if they're a narcissist, and that will help me definitively decide whether or not I want to be around them.
Well, that's right. And for the layman, that's of less value. Now, certainly, like if you're a medical professional, obviously treating somebody that is, say, depressed or has bipolar disorder or is borderline personality disorder, okay, let's say, like those would be things that superficially would tick a lot of the same boxes, but the treatment protocols or the medications for each would be radically different. And that if you did one intervention with a misdiagnosis, you're very likely to make the person worse, right? With really negative outcomes. Okay, so like there's that kind of reality there. And that's why it's important to do the best you can to try to diagnose these things as accurately as you can. But for the average person, if you're not prescribing anybody pills and you're just trying to understand what their behavior is, right? Less so. I mean, if you're in a partnership with somebody and you care about them and you want them to get help, whatever. I mean, but again, I'm still going to go back to the kind of thing that I've been asserting with this other stuff, is that quality relationships are about each other, right? It's about relating. If in fact you are dealing with an individual that can't do that, either because they're a prick or they have a chemical imbalance, you don't really have a relationship yet.
That's correct. Yep.
Okay, that's what I'm getting at. There's your boundary. All right. Now, if in spite of that, you want to extend opportunity to support that individual, and you do that deliberately, knowing the risks, right? That's your biz. That's can be an elegant and caring thing to do. But I don't think anybody should feel that they're obligated to do that.
Yeah, it's almost like today, like if you can relate to someone, you get along with somebody, and they happen to have, say, a diagnosable condition, it matters less. It's kind of an add-on that you may or may not be able to tolerate. Well, but if the person's a complete arsehole, you don't have the same values, there's just so much wrong that you're tolerating, you don't know how to speak up, you're just grateful that you're not alone, then the only way out might be that, I'm not saying this, people should think this way, but the lazy way out is like, she's diagnosed as a narcissist. Okay, hit the ejection button. But you weren't able to discern anything close to that prior to being told, like, okay, this is a valid reason why you should leave.
Yeah, right. As if you need a valid reason. You don't need a valid reason. Not in the world we live in. Like, those are the new rules. It's not satisfying to you. That's good enough.
Yeah. Yeah, I like how you termed in the last video or the one before, you said relationships are for people who can relate.
That's it, man. That's it. So, like, I mean, I'm not surprised they don't work out very often, you know. I mean, interestingly enough, for individuals that can relate, I have certainly seen people, even couples that have had significant troubles with, like, real diagnosable problems in it, who have made the condition part of the relationship work. It's infrequent, but it can happen. But it takes a remarkable amount of courage, especially on the part of the person with one that has the affliction, because they have to extend a ridiculous amount of deferential trust towards their partner.
And it also depends on how much time and patience you're willing to have for that too.
That's right. And I'm not saying that anybody should be obligated with that. And there may be times in your life where you simply can't afford to take the chance. Like, that can be reality too.
Yeah. You just don't have the time or patience for it, yeah.
Well, that's right. And that's okay, because I don't think anybody can really be asked for that. But it's not impossible if you had people that had sufficient ability to relate, to overcome even pretty significant maladies. What it really comes down to is whether the individuals have the basic skill for relating or not. And, like, if you don't, well, nothing is going to work. If you do, almost everything can be overcome. So it's a big deal. And again, I'm still going to stick with, unless a person works at it, you'll never develop it. And that only comes with practice, and practice only comes by taking chances, period. I don't care how you take the chances, but you got to do it somewhere.
I would add to that consciously working on it, particularly at the beginning of most male-female relationships, where there's a lot of that, certain parties don't always reveal who they are. Well, people are passive. They're not as open. One party is, one party isn't. Is working on it. I know myself, I'm very much, I try as much to sort of just let out everything and not have any boundaries, because if she's going to reject me, I want it to be as soon as possible.
Sure. Because
that's real and that's honest. Yeah. And I want her to see me for who I am. And likewise.
It's challenging. I mean, without a doubt, it's challenging. And unfortunately, in fact, the more disciplined one might be towards developing the skills to relate to other people, the more choosy you will become. And the likelihood of meeting somebody that can reciprocate that commitment to relating, that gets thinner.
Yeah, and it's not a pompous standard as well. When you hear someone say you're too picky, whereas I've noticed my standards are, I just want a kind, decent person that I can talk to, and I've seen, like, that's my standard, and they turned to me and said, "Isn't that just a given?" And I love it. It should fucking be.
No. It should be, but it's not. Absolutely not. It isn't. It isn't. People, men and women both, feel entitled by societal norms to hurt and injure each other.
And I think it's because of age as well. I consciously realize that I have less patience for people, as in, not that I want to relate well, but in terms of getting older and so forth, in terms of the people in my life, the time the patience I'll have in accommodating people and giving them a chance and a second chance and so forth, it's very, very small these days. It's kind of really contracted.
Sure.
So much so that I've been on a couple of first dates and very few second or third.
Right.
because I see clearly, and you've got the benefit of your testosterone going down and all those kind of things as well to help you use your prefrontal instead of your lizard brain. But things like, I remember the last chick I went on a date with, but during the date I was poking and prodding in a very interested way to find out what she thought about A and B and her views.
Sure.
And it was just, and it wasn't me interrogating
No.
with an intentional purpose of, disqualifying her. But I just, let some of you out. But as I've noticed a lot of fear in people as they've gotten older, if they don't have the courage to kind of self-examine, it increases their probability of finding someone genuine, because the person that self-examines and is honest with that as much as they can is more likely to meet someone else who'll let out the vulnerable sides, their positive or negative predilections, and then you can actually see that it doesn't matter.
A lot of people find it very intimidating, in fact.
I find it liberating. It's the only way I can actually know.
Oh, well, absolutely. Absolutely. But, I mean, nobody likes being asked questions they don't have answers for. That's embarrassing. So like if you're like, how do you feel about X? And they're like, I mean, no answer. I haven't. It's like, what do you think about this? I haven't. Like that starts to feel pretty uncomfortable.
I remember she was telling me about, who she lived in Paris for a year. And I kept asking personal questions like, why did you like living in Paris? And the answers were empty. So I kept trying to get her opinion out. And I just couldn't. And they were seemingly simple questions, but she couldn't express why she liked certain things, how she valued things. And to me, they're the interesting conversations, and they're the ones where the person's revealed and liberated and can feel closer to another. I really feel this distance with people who can't, and I'm not judging them, but I don't find much value in being around a person intimately in my life and continuing to want to see them and engage and reciprocate and so forth if they're just a safe lemming.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what you're doing is you're tipping your hand here, and you're confessing in front of all your kin and brothers here that you have the capacity to relate to other individuals, and you're frustrated by the fact that you're meeting women that don't.
Like when someone asks me, what are your fears? My first impulse is, oh, awesome. I get this.
Oh, yeah, right. Exactly. Well, that's the thing, right? So because the questions that you're asking of this date that you had, I mean, hypothetically, are the kinds of questions that a person that has a relationship with life thinks about. And she doesn't have a relationship with life, so she's never thought about it. It's like, why would you do that? It beats me. Don't have any idea. Never even crossed my mind. My relationship is it.
And for me, I find those kind of people uncomfortable, not because they want to travel or do anything, but there's no why. There's no anchor to decisions. So how the hell am I supposed to trust or, God forbid, get into a relationship with someone that I can't trust to sort of be who they were yesterday?
Yeah, it's a person with no capacity for subtlety. So what'll happen is that they will get extraordinarily bored with you. Because only the most dramatic things you ever do will actually get through their firewall and inability to relate.
That's a fantastic way of seeing things.
Well, I mean, that's it. Because, I mean, they obviously need only the most maximum stimuli will give them the ability to relate to the other. They have no subtlety whatsoever. They have no palate in any way, form, or fashion for the more interesting, nuanced, and immediate aspects of living.
I have to wonder then, I can't understand why so many, like the relationships I've had, and I've had a few and a handful of serious ones, multi-year ones, what they saw in me, because I am a very simple, basic person.
Novelty.
Maybe, but I tend to get, I'm interesting. Maybe I'm a splash of cold water in their face compared to a lot of, guys who like football and drink beer.
Sure.
But to stay with someone for years and
How
then
long?
get bored,
Not infrequent.
yeah, I know, but I just kind of find it peculiar. It's that whole
Well, it's a conflict between, novelty and comfort and security, boredom. Eventually, one of those wins out.
But that's a pretty astute observation about those people that get bored and need novelty, unless you get through their firewall.
That's right. I mean, it's interesting. It was almost 10 years ago. I had a relationship with a woman who was very narcissistic and self-centered, and clinically so, in fact. And I got drugged to the couples therapy thing. And it was pretty interesting because it's like what had attracted me to this woman in the first place is that she was quite worldly and she had traveled all quite extensively, not nearly like I do. Like I'm I should see that she'd been to a lot of countries, but I'm the kind of guy that just sails a boat around, and I'm obviously more interested in the intimacy more than the spread, I guess, right? But this particular couples therapist was actually a pretty shrewd cat, and he had prepared this list, and there was probably 100 questions on this list, and passed them out, one to her and one to me. And what they were, and I was just shocked, was questions about her. All right, so
Both of you got questions about her.
about each other.
Oh, she got questions about you.
Oh, yeah. Like stuff like, where was I born? What's my favorite food? What's like just questions, just like 100 questions about the other individual.
I can see where this is going. That's brilliant.
Oh, yeah. And I went right on down the line. It's like, I bagged 80% of these. It was no trouble. And she was just paralyzed. 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 Like, I mean, she was not sure what my middle name was. Right? So, like, it was just, I mean, I said, well, that's pretty fucking obvious right there. Like, talk about a powerful diagnostic. And the guy said, there's, to me personally, it's like, there's no way you can work anything out with a person like that. Just don't even put any time in it. She doesn't care at all about you. Zero. If she did, she'd be able to answer some of those questions.
Yeah, it's a reason I walked away from my last as well. I realized I didn't exist at all.
Oh, well, see, that's it. And, like, there's an interesting way of quantifying it, right? You literally can quantify that. And you can literally put a person's feet to the fire and say, you don't know anything about this person, and you're claiming that this is some kind of partnership? It's like you have invested nothing whatsoever in this person. Nothing. It's demonstrable, right? So, like, that's just interesting because very often I would say that I would also predict from kind of my view of global relating that while a person like that may travel broadly around the world, they're just picking up trophies for themselves. And if you were to actually ask them what they saw or what was there or what they did, that you would have an equal lack of any kind of intimacy with that experience too, just like there was no intimacy with me, because that's how they just face everything on the most superficial level, which is why they have to have all the flavors of ice cream at their disposal all the time, because they don't even have the ability to even see what one of them tastes like.
Anyway, man, okay. Pleasure talking
man.
to you, man. I'll let you get back to your life. Hope you're doing well too. How's your foot, by the way?
It's good, actually. I mean, it was kind of touch and go for a bit, but yeah, no, it's healed up. But man, that was a mess. Mauled by an oyster.
Yeah.
Like, it's so dumb. It was like I at one point kicked a black bear in the face, right? And I know shit did, but this oyster kicked my ass.
It's
like the bear didn't do a thing to me, but the frickin' oyster, man, like that was for serious.
Yeah, it's usually the blind spot that gets you.
Oh God.
Thanks very much to Quasimandias for taking the time to have this conversation. I hope you enjoyed listening to it as much as we enjoyed recording it. Please check his channel out, link below. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you already haven't. Hit the bell icon and select all. It helps me out. I really appreciate it, guys. Give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video. Give me a thumbs down if you didn't. Comment, like, and if you feel like saying thank you, there are donation options below. Thanks very much, guys. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.